Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jane Sperling, White House American Rescue Plan Coordinator and Senior Advisor to the President.
I want to welcome everyone who is joining us anywhere and everywhere across the United States and further on what we have called Get Your Child Tax Credit EITC Day, or I should say Get Your Child Tax Credit EITC Day of Action, with the focus on action. The American Rescue Plan included a dramatic expansion of the child tax credit and the first ever monthly delivery. The American Rescue Plan also had a major increase for the earned income tax credit. Now, I am so old that I was here in 1993 at the White House when President Clinton created the first credit for workers without dependent children. I'm also old enough to have watched for 28 years as it was never increased once until the American Rescue Plan, until the Biden-Harris administration and Congress not only increased it, but tripled it to $1,500 and increased the eligibility for older and younger workers. And we finally, at long last, made lasting reforms for the children of Puerto Rico. Now, I will be direct. Everyone here wanted to be further at this point in having extended these two American Rescue Plan tax cuts. I assure you, no one in the Biden-Harris administration is not still fighting hard or has given up. But this day is about ensuring that all Americans eligible for the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit expansion receive them. Now, we knew from our first Child Tax Credit Awareness Day on June 14th that this meant implementation had to be both from the top down and the bottom up. We have learned together in meeting with groups across the country, in weekly calls, in deep dive meetings, that signing up everyone is challenging, that it requires perseverance, and not only smart federal policies and additional funding, but smart outreach, navigators, human touch from trusted sources in trusted places. Every time we have improved our efforts over this last year, it was due to consulting and listening with many of you, the grassroots champions of the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit. On this day of action, hundreds and hundreds of children's groups, nonprofits, foundations, advocacy groups for racial justice, rural communities, tribal government, Puerto Rico, foster youth, those with disabilities, have again risen to the call and have pledged events and actions throughout the tax filing season to help everyone get the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit. This includes mayors from across this country, from Mike Dugan in Detroit and Mayor Lori Lightfoot in Chicago to Daniel Levine Cava in Miami-Dade County. It includes a day of action event by 6 of our greatest congressional champions: Rosa DeLauro, Michael Bennett, Cory Booker, Reverend Warnock, Susan DelBene, and Sherrod Brown. It includes an all-of-government effort at outreach, at texting, at connecting people with our new childtaxcredit.gov. And these efforts go from Social Security Administration to the Department of Health and Human Services. It is truly a coalition for economic dignity. But if you are like me, nothing speaks more to the commitment of the Biden-Harris administration to the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit that the two women who agreed to be our champions today just happen to be the Vice President of the United States and the Secretary of Treasury. They are what you might call pretty high-level co-conspirators for economic justice. And this is not the first time, nor will it be the last, that they have worked together in this cause. They did not just wander into this auditorium. They have dedicated their lives to economic justice and reducing economic inequality. And while we have a special guest who's going to introduce the Vice President, I cannot fail to add one note to that introduction. In 2018, when Vice President Harris was Senator Harris, she was the principal author of the LIFT Act, which was one of the forerunners of the monthly payments. And I never saw anyone make a stronger case as to its importance for reducing predatory lending, reducing poverty, and lifting day by day, daily dignity. With that, I want to bring on one of those grassroots champions, one of the people who makes all the difference, of which nothing good can really happen without the efforts of people like this. Her name is Sharon Holquin. She has been a VITA volunteer since 2009. She is a dedicated volunteer, mom, grandma, and there's probably no one who better represents the people that are out there on this call today and more fitting to introduce the Vice President of the United States than Sharon. Sharon, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sharon Holquin, and I am born and raised in Washington, D.C., and I have been part of the VITA tax communication community since 2009. From that time, I have learned so much about the Earned Income Credit and the Child Tax Credit. I had raised my son and my grandson in a part of this program. However, I have learned so much from the program, as well as they have offered a lot of other programs with it as well when you apply for your tax return. It's very important for everyone to know the value of how you can get involved to receive the Earned Income Credit and the Child Tax Credit as well for your children and your family. From this, I have learned how to enjoy my life with my children, as well as to encourage other people in the community about it. Now, I would like to take this time, first time I ever met Vice President Harris, which is an honor to introduce her to the program, as she helps those who doesn't understand and to let them know that it's very important and they are here to help us, as well as to show us the direction of how we can live a better life. So as me being having this opportunity, and it's an honor, I really appreciate her, admire her for all that she's done and all she's doing and all what she's about to do. So everyone who's listening, please take this opportunity to learn and to cherish and value that you are not alone, that we're all working with you and we're all working together. It doesn't matter how the level of your life is, there's still hope and there's still an opportunity to better your life. And I would like to introduce Vice President Harris so that she can share with y'all the value and the importance of this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sharon, for that very meaningful introduction. And Sharon and I were talking earlier, you know, there's so much about the child tax credit that is about the impact, the intergenerational impact. And Sharon was sharing with me that her grandfather actually worked with President Kennedy. And we were talking about the fact that obviously her family has a long, strong, and deep commitment to public service and this good work. So thank you, Sharon, for that introduction. It is good to be here with two of the most energetic champions of our nation's working families, Secretary Janet Yellen and Jean Sperling. And as many of you know, Secretary Yellen and I are working on a number of things. Jean, I heard your introduction about the conspiracy. It's not a conspiracy. It's just a collaboration to do very important work to lift people up with one of the leaders in the world on how we do that in terms of economic empowerment. So Secretary Yellen, thank you. Jean Sperling, thank you for your years of hard work. You really are the backbone of what we as an administration have been doing with the child tax credit. So on this day of action, there are so many individuals and organizations who are dedicated to action. The United Way, AARP, and Code for America. And I want to thank all of you for the work you do every day and for joining us today. So our message today is simple. If you are eligible for the child tax credit and the Earned Income Tax Credit. We want you to get those credits. And you know why. Working families deserve a break. Last month, I received a letter from a mother in Pennsylvania. She and her husband have 4 children. They both work 50-hour weeks. They coordinate their schedules to minimize the cost of childcare. And their family is still barely holding on. They just need a little help. And that's what she told me in her note. A hand up, not a handout, a hand up. And I receive letters like this all the time. The truth is, there are people across our nation who work hard every day and still struggle to get by. And it should not be this way in our country, in the United States of America. And the President and I firmly believe that we have to do better. And that is why we fought to expand the child tax credit and the Earned Income Tax Credit as part of the American Rescue Plan, to give families and working people a little help. The American Rescue Plan increased the child tax credit and extended it to millions more families. And the American Rescue Plan also nearly tripled the maximum Earned Income Tax Credit and made it available to workers between 19 and 24 years of age, as well as to workers 65 years old and above. These tax credits are already making a difference. In fact, thanks to the child tax credit, we are on a path to cut child poverty in America by 40%. That bears repeating. We are on a path to cut child poverty by 40%. This is historic, and as I said earlier, will have generational impact. Millions of families have used their monthly child tax credit, CTC, check, to put food on the table, to save for college, to cover daily expenses, and to pay down debt. That is why this day of action is so important. If you are eligible for either of these credits, or even if you think you might be eligible, please go to the following website, childtaxcredit.gov, childtaxcredit.gov. It is a quick and easy way to check whether you qualify. And if you qualify, all you need to do to receive benefits is to file your taxes. Now, one more important note. If you are one of the more than 30 million families who have already received the child tax credit, you still need to file your taxes. So that is the only way to receive the second half of what you are owed. So remember, you are owed more, but you still need to file your taxes. Everyone here knows it will take a hands-on deck approach to get people signed up for these credits. So we need help. We need state and local governments to send out texts to remind folks of what they are entitled to receive. We need faith-based organizations to spread the word at houses of worship. We need community groups to get people the help they need to file their taxes. And we need everyone to spread the word, be it at Sunday dinner, at the barbershop, at work, at school, and at home. And I believe and I know our work will be worth it, because every family we lift up, when we do that, we lift up our entire nation. And that's why the President and I will keep fighting to extend these measures for years to come. And I'll close today where I began, with that mother from Pennsylvania. In her letter, she wrote that earlier this year, her family started receiving the monthly child tax credit. And with the money, she described that they bought food, they paid their daily expenses, and they supported local businesses in the process. She wrote, nothing fancy, just making a difference. So it's enough to make a difference. And that's why we are here today, to make a difference for working families across our nation, to offer just a little help. So thank you all for what you have done and will continue to do. Let's keep getting the word out and be well and take care. Thank you.
Pass the child tax credit when Manchin says BBB is done. Can you give us any updates on the Supreme Court process? Thank you.
As I introduce our next speaker, I want to say as coordinator of the American Rescue Plan, we focus on implementation of the American Rescue Plan. This is what President Biden believes so strongly in, that it's not just good enough to pass legislation. You have to implement. You have to make sure it reaches the people it is designed to reach. There probably was no greater implementation accomplishment than the fact that the child tax credit passed on just March 11th was within 4 months going out on a monthly basis to 61 million children. I want to thank the Department of Treasury for their partnership with the American Rescue Plan team, their weekly meetings, the leadership of their amazing Office of Tax Policy, their Deputy Secretary, Adiemo. But in the end, that responsibility, that focus on getting the child tax credit out monthly in just 4 months for the first time ever fell to two people, the Secretary of Treasury, Janet Yellen, and the IRS Commissioner, Chuck Rettig. And I want to thank both of them for their commitment and their leadership in making that happen. And now I am introducing, of course, our Secretary of Treasury, Janet Yellen. It's not a hard person to introduce because as former chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, former chairman of the Federal Reserve, and the current Secretary of Treasury, she perhaps has the best, or at least among the best, economic resumes in American history. But what I have seen from her is, as Alan Blinder used to say, the hard head, but the soft, compassionate heart. She is a person who cares about people. In 2006, when she was chair of the San Francisco Federal Reserve, she gave a powerful speech on economic inequality. And she said at one point, beyond education and training, the United States has long deployed an array of policy tools to combat inequality and diminish economic security. The real question is whether government should and can do more. Well, as Secretary of Treasury, Secretary Yellen has given a pretty resounding yes to the question she asked in 2006. And she's not only answered yes, yet she has used her position as Secretary of Treasury to lead on the Earned Income Tax Credit and Child Tax Credit and numerous other policies to make this country more fair and more just to all of its people. With that, I'd like to introduce our Secretary of Treasury, Janet Yellen.
Thank you, Jean, and thank you all for coming. And more importantly, thank you for the work you're doing to make sure these tax credits actually reach the people they're intended to help. I especially want to thank Vice President Harris. We would not be here today without her work. You know, there's a very famous story about Harry Truman. You've probably heard it. He once asked to be sent a one-armed economist. He didn't like the way his current economic counselors were advising him, always saying, on the one hand, before making a caveat, but on the other. Truman didn't like the equivocation. Well, I tell this story because had Harry Truman decided to expand the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit, he would have been quite pleased with his advisors. This is an issue where there actually are many one-armed economists, so to speak. There is very little equivocation that these policies lift up the lives of millions of people, and in so doing, lift up the country. They're good for the micro and the macro. I think about the research of economists like Larry Katz at Harvard. There's a whole body of literature around the EITC and what it does for single mothers and children. It improves mental health. It boosts employment and earnings. But Larry also found that expanding the EITC produces many of the same effects in single people without children. There's also a wide body of research around the child tax credit. For years, economists have studied government payments to families with kids, and they've found that the money is linked to all sorts of positive things: better health, higher lifetime earnings, better high school graduation, and college attendance rates. One recent study even found some evidence that when governments make cash payments to poorer mothers, there's better brain development in their babies. When we took office last January, I think many of us looked at research like this and saw expanding the CTC and the EITC as one of the most promising anti-poverty strategies we had in our arsenal, especially in the midst of the pandemic that swept millions of children and family under the poverty line. And so that's what the American Rescue Plan did. President Biden signed it into law a year ago on Friday. It made tax credits both more generous and fully refundable, meaning that even the lowest income families could get them. We had very high hopes for these policies. But as you've heard, the results lived up to even our most ambitious expectations. The last year witnessed the largest drop in child poverty in American history. After the first monthly CTC credit went out, food instability among low-income families with children dropped 43%. You could even see a nationwide sigh of relief in the data. 70% of caregivers reported that they were less stressed about making ends meet. And here's perhaps the most remarkable part. There's still so much money on the table. Most families have only received half of their child tax credits, or even less. And workers are only starting to see the expanded earned income tax credit now as they file taxes and get their refunds. I think there's a common notion, and it's an understandable one, that once Congress passes a big relief package like the American Rescue Plan, the rest is almost automatic. The biggest hurdle is getting a bill to the president's desk. The rest is easy. The truth, though, is that the machinery of government is complicated. It's rusty in some places, and it was not designed to do exactly this. The American Rescue Plan charged the IRS with figuring out how to get tens of millions of families a monthly advance on this year's child tax credit. But the agency had never delivered these kinds of payments before, certainly not on this scale, and to families whose incomes were low enough that they weren't required to file taxes. This is the problem we've spent many late nights solving over the past year, and your organizations have helped us. Together, we've built new tools for the IRS. We've redesigned the machinery of government, and as a result, we've sent out monthly payments to more than 30 million families, including 26 million lower-income children who received the full child tax credit for the first time. But our work, as I mentioned, is not done. There is still so many families who did not receive an advance payment. For example, because their child was only born last year and did not filed a tax return before, or because they're a resident of Puerto Rico. In many cases, we're talking about families who are still entitled to $3,000 to $3,600, depending on the age of their child. Right now, the best way, and really the only way to get people this money, is for them to file their taxes. I know what a challenge that will be. Filing taxes can be hard, and we're talking about some of the hardest to reach people in this country, people to whom the government has far too often been blind, but who your organizations excel at serving. Your knowledge, your experience is what's required right now. And I can promise you that the U.S. Treasury will provide you with every resource we have to help you do the job. The last thing I'll say is these policies have already done enormous good. They've produced a profound moral and economic achievement for America. Imagine the new scale of that achievement, though, when we finally get these benefits to the people who need them most. Thank you.